Good evening. Preseason's over. The talk's been had, the tape's been watched, and the roster is set. Carolina's got their irons in the fire on a brand new prospect. Season tips off this week, and Kansas looms just around the corner. Tonight, we'll hit on Maximo Adams. We'll officially wrap up the preseason and look ahead to what's next because we got real basketball. Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran, I'm Joey Powell. This is the Coast to Coast from InsideCarolina.com. Gentlemen, ladies, friends of all ages, glad you're here on this Sunday evening edition of the Coast to Coast. Might be a little shorter of a show tonight because we got a couple of topics we were going to hit. I got to admit, I was just fine watching some ball this evening, putting my feet up, letting my kids run around and drive me nuts. But no, Sean and Sherrell said, Joey, we got to give the people what it is that they crave. We got to give them one final show with a few updates and preview Central Arkansas and Kansas. And guys, I'm a humanist. I am a fan of man. I wanted to do what it is the people need. And so I went along with the two guys that pretty much run the show around here. And so we said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do the show. Let's have the show. And here we sit. A lot to talk about. The season's officially here, y'all. We had one more preseason this past week against Winston-Salem State. 2 games on deck this week. Why don't we start with a little bit of recruiting talk? Sherrell, Maximo Adams, give me some reactions to where North Carolina stands with the recent visit that he took. I know you guys talked with him. You got some follow-up. You got some good insight as to where he stands and what his next steps might be. So, Sherrell, give us the updates, please, good sir.
Yeah, since the last time we talked on here, he officially visited UNC. I think he was on his visit while the last time we did our show. But for everything we heard, the visit always goes great. But as with Bryson Howard, it went from a situation where Carolina really wasn't mentioned much in the recruitment to pretty much like, hey, there's a real shot that Carolina could get this kid. And that seems to be a recurring theme here, I would say, over the last year. When Carolina is in a mode where they definitely want a prospect and they need the prospect, then they have shown a willingness to be, I would say, ultra aggressive in all facets of the recruitment. And you can look back really, last year, it started with, I would say, really started with Isaiah Dennis, I would say. They knew they needed a guard and there was some fierce competition and they kind of pulled out all the stops. And then you go from him to Caleb Wilson. And then it carried over into the portal with guys like Vesar or Vesar, depending on who you ask, and Kyan Evans, where they did everything within their ability to make sure that they got those guys. And I think that's where they are with Maximo Adams. It's kind of like interesting because, 2 months ago, none of us really thought that he would make the visit because we assumed that he probably would be off the board or North Carolina would have gotten someone else at his position. And it's one of the reasons recruiting is so fascinating is because, Adams kind of sees the musical chairs and, there's 10 people and there's 9 chairs. So somebody's going to get left out. And when you start to see who prioritize other guys, you start to see what schools lost out, then that's when a situation comes where he looks at Carolina and Carolina's aggressive and it kind of vaults them, I want to say the leader, but near the top of his recruitment from what we've been hearing alongside Texas and Michigan State, though I think it's really more Texas than Michigan State. I don't want to say those are his final 3, but that's what we hear the most are those 3 in connection with him. And I think we probably will have a decision by the early signing period, which is in a couple of weeks. So that's where things stand. If you read the update last week, you kind of know there might have been, or we've heard tell of a Hubert Davis trip out there. Can't confirm it, the date or time, or if it's happened yet. But that's something to look out for. And I'm sure he's talking to other schools and getting their final pitches and about to make his decision.
Thank you, sir. Sean, I want you to give me kind of an overview of his skill set, how he projects, and then I know it's hard to project rosters now because things are just so wild. But if you could touch on those first couple of things for me, that'd be awesome.
Sure. At 6'7", I'd say he slots more into a 3-4 than maybe a Caleb Wilson replacement. But I think in terms of what he will bring, he
How
does have
tall?
the
Wait, go back. How tall did you say he was?
oh my.
I wasn't. I had a glitch in my headphones, man. Sorry. Go ahead.
6'7", but with a great shot. So I think Joey's jokes aside, the main thing for him, and even when you look at Howard, who is ranked a little higher, and you have Maximo ranked, I believe, 23, which in my opinion is a little underranked. The thing that'll translate immediately is the shot. He shot over 40% in EYBL. He has probably one of I'd say the prettiest strokes in high school right now. So with the stroke, the strong and high release, he's probably not the most explosive of athletes, but he's able to put the ball on the floor and use that height, especially against smaller defenders. So I think if they were to get him, would be getting a very talented prospect and somebody that would be able to come in immediately, especially with the shooting ability, and most likely provide a starting level caliber talent. So even though they missed on Howard, if they were to get Adams, I think he brings certain skills that Howard did not have, and would be extremely excited to see him at UNC next year, given that shooting ability.
Sherrell, to make this clear, this would be a foundation piece for North Carolina's roster next year, not just a headline grab, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And we've talked about how it's unclear, building rosters year to year. But even if you take continuity into it, the wing is one spot where I think they're deficient, because we'll get to it later. But there's one player we don't know about his status for this year, let alone next year. Jonathan Powell hasn't played a second, at Carolina yet, and you're not sure what to expect from him. And then Jaron Stevenson, he could come back, but he could be playing some 4 or some 3-4s in combination. So there is a need for wing help for UNC, and I think that's why they've really ratcheted up their recruitment of Adams here in the last month.
Appreciate that, guys. I think that this will be one for fans and viewers of this here show. Keep your eyes on it. Like Sherrell said, there's a pretty good indication that this might get taken care of in the early signing period or leading up to the early signing period. So,
and I'll just add, Joey, if after him, there's no one of which we're aware on the wing that they are seriously connected to.
Okay.
Really, the only one is Dylan Mingo. He's a point guard. There's talk of a visit, but I don't know if that's been confirmed. It hasn't been officially confirmed yet. So that's something we're watching. But after that, there's not much out there. So and I would say, I guess Cam Holmes is not deciding until mid-December. So those are kind of the last two out there for UNC on the wing. Cam Holmes, who a lot of people say that Arizona's out front for him. He's from Arizona. And then Maxi.
All right. So let's talk about putting a bow on this here preseason. We've seen, the 2 exhibitions. We've seen a couple of intra-squad scrimmages. What I want to throw at you guys is, now that we've seen that, real ball starts within 24 hours of us recording this. What was your biggest, I guess, the highest confidence level you have in any key role so far? So it could be a player or position group or anything like that. Sean, I'm gonna come to you first.
I guess highest confidence, which I might not have said a few weeks ago, but probably is Caleb Wilson in terms of his both offensive and defensive ability. And not that he's going to be the go-to guy, but that he will be able to find a way to score. He's aggressive, crashing the glass, has the athleticism to put on some highlight reel plays, and hopefully we'll see a developing skill set outside of 15 feet as we go. I think would feel pretty comfortable, if he got it from 10, 12 feet from the basket, turning and shooting or attacking. But I think what he's going to bring scoring wise and rebounding wise has probably got me at the most excited level. There's probably a lot of other things we've talked about, especially with Vasar and some of the other other players offensively. But I think there was enough pause in either of the preseason games to say, hey, it might take a little while to get to that point that we've been talking about. So I would say Wilson in term for that question.
Yeah, it's a lot of things to take away from Caleb Wilson so far. Big paws and a puppy. A lot to be excited about. Sherrell, what's your highest level of confidence from seeing all the preseason action so far?
I think they can be a really good defensive team. I'm pretty confident in that because individually, they have three, I would say, above average defenders that we know of, in Seth Trimble, and Caleb Wilson, and then Henry Vasar, however you say it. And I think Jaron Stevenson can be added to that as a fourth, pending, aggression with him and motor and all those things. So not only do you have four really good individual defenders, but they all fit well, and that it kind of marries across in that you have someone like Trimble who can push up on guards and get out in passing lanes, but then you have Vasar and Wilson back there to kind of take out the trash, so to speak. And then you have Caleb Wilson, who is an excellent, I shouldn't say excellent because he didn't play the college game, but we expect to be a really good defensive rebounder. And then we have Vasar, who's proven to be a really good offensive rebounder. So I think between that and the potential for block shots and Trimble getting out in passing lanes, I just think it can be a really good defensive team. So I have confidence that they'll be a good defensive team.
Yeah, I usually don't answer these questions. I like let you guys kind of run with them, but I was pleasantly surprised at how Jaron Stevenson looked in what we've seen from him. I know that three of us have kind of considered him to be just a giant X factor, as in, is he like Jalen Withers, who has all the skills but just disappears completely a lot of times? But what I've seen from him, and granted, same caveats as usual about the preseason, limited minutes, various competition, et cetera, et cetera. He's looked really confident in what he's doing on the floor. And I don't know that you can say that about Jalen Withers for most of the time that he was here. So that immediately to me makes me excited at the potential for what Stevenson and his versatility and his size can do for this roster. I do think it changes their floor a little bit. If he's who Hubert Davis wants him to be, man, I tell you what, that's going to change things for this squad. I think we know who this team wants to be, and now they've got to start proving it because games become real as of tomorrow. Central Arkansas, we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about them other than shout out to Scottie Pippen. I don't know if he learned how to not tip at Central Arkansas, but I know that's where he went to school. Sherrell, I want to ask you, what do you think that the goals for this game against Central Arkansas should be? I understand that the win is always first, so let's throw that out. What do you think, besides winning the game, should be a goal for this team in the opener Monday?
Hey, you know me well. That was gonna be the first thing. It's like they can't take anything for granted. We've seen under Hubert Davis, UNC come out in openers and look flat and lethargic, and into the second half where they have to beat a team who's far less talented. There was Elon last year. There was College of Charleston a few years ago where Baycott had to go nuclear with like 28 and 14 for them to squeak by a win in the second half. So I think you're looking for progression, basically each TV timeout. You want to see a little bit better play, through the 8-minute timeout in the second half. The hope would be that you have a good 22, 25, 26 point lead. And you can, take your starters out, let some guys who need minutes get minutes, and come out with who knows what might happen in those final minutes that can skew things, but come out with a 18 to 22, point win, something like that. I think that's what you're looking at from a high level. I think from individual or kind of a smaller scale, I think you want to see Kyan Evans hit a couple threes just to get his confidence going. Not saying he doesn't have confidence, but it would be nice in his first game for him to hit a couple of threes. And you want to see that ball movement that we've seen in the preseason continue. So Evans, a couple of threes, a nice comfortable win where you're not worried about the outcome with at the under 8 timeout like they have been in the last couple of years. And then getting some guys some minutes who need to play. Jaden Young, James Brown, Zayden High, those guys, you want them playing 12, 13, 14 minutes if you can.
Sean, I've seen some really good responses from the folks in the chat. There's almost 300 of y'all joining us here on a Sunday night. That bodes well for the season. We want you guys to make this appointment viewing as we start doing these on a weekly basis. So we want you to make this part of your Sunday. And we're glad you've made this part of your Sunday. You know what? If you're listening to us as a podcast later on, doesn't matter. We're glad you're here. Regardless of when you're listening to us, we're just glad you're making us a part of your typical UNC fandom. Sean, I kind of want to ask you the same question, but I want to put a twist on it. Is there something specific you need to see from one or two players? Sherrell mentioned the Evans threes, but I want to ask you just kind of what we're expecting from this roster. Is there something from one or two players that you've got to see on Monday night to make you feel better about where they've come since the roster was assembled?
Well, I'll stay on the Kine Evans. I think Sherrell hit on everything perfectly. A few threes would be nice. For me, it would be more, how is he handling the ball and incorporating himself into the offense to get those threes? We'll talk about it in Kansas, but to me, that's going to be one of the keys of the week. And then offensively, Vasar, who, once again, I think when they're running pick and rolls, and his offensive ability really, I think in large part will determine the ceiling for this team if he's operating at a high level. But also from then a team-wide perspective, are they in sync? Are they all five knowing the plays that are being run? I think in BYU, we saw several times where 3 people were on one page, 2 were on the other. So to have that quick ball movement, they all need to be on the same page. And then coming off the bench in terms of Jonathan Powell, his ability to stretch the floor, how is he moving to get those open looks? Is he fading away when he's shooting? Is he able to contribute in other ways? So those to me would be a few things, but I think from Monday and how that looks to Friday, Kine Evans and his fit in the offense will be one of the key things I'm looking for.
Like that. And again, some really good feedback from folks in the chat. I think they got a little spooked by Vasar only getting 1 rebound against the Rams and Winston-Salem State. Yeah, I would worry about that too if it wasn't just the one game, but we'll see. I think there's lots to be determined. And if you don't see it Monday against Central Arkansas, well, good news. Kansas is coming to town. And you know what Kansas coming to town means, Sherrell? That means you've got a chance to go watch UNC play Kansas and go to Johnny T-shirt. Quite simply, I don't know what else you would want to have a perfect recipe for just an amazing oleo of basketball fandom. Johnny T-shirt, Franklin Street, Chapel Hill. Go hit them up. Leave work early on Friday. All right. Tell your boss, or if you're the boss, even better, but tell whoever you need to let know. I gave you the okay. Go to Johnny T-shirt early on Friday. Load up on new gear. All right. Get your new fit looking right. Make sure you're not rolling up in some chopped gear, as my son says. Get yourself looking right. Unfortunately, they don't have this one-of-a-kind custom New Era IC fitted that I've got on, but they got everything else. And honestly, they'd probably try to get you a custom fitted if you wanted one because they're that good at customer service. If you're a premium Inside Carolina subscriber, you know that you get 10% off of their amazing prices by using the code on the message boards. If you're not a premium Inside Carolina subscriber, there's a QR code up there on the screen if you want to hit that up. Either way, you can join, become a premium subscriber, get all this goodness. No better time to do it. Football team finally ground into a win. Basketball is really getting started. Postseason plays starting for a lot of the Olympic sports. So come on, get in here. You know you want to. Come hang with the cool kids. You will always get to hear your favorite podcast, but you get all this other goodness like Sherrell's scoops, like Sean's film breakdowns, like all the stuff that Rob's going to be giving you weekly, like Justin Jackson's impressions, all that stuff coming to you if you are a premium subscriber. All right, Johnny T-shirt, we appreciate them. Stick around. There'll be some national guys that run some ads here if you're listening to us in podcast form. For those of you in the YouTube, the chat, watching this live, just hang. Nothing's changing for y'all. All right, so here's the deal. I want to talk really quickly about Luka. I know that there's been all sorts of questions floating around there. Sherrell, you gave a really, really good update. You and Ben have kind of had your fingers on the pulse about this better than anybody else. Game is Monday. So within 24 hours of as we're recording this, I'm not asking you to say whether or not he'll play, but should North Carolina now start considering what happens if he doesn't become eligible? Or am I just feeling the antsiness and the anxiety of the IC subscriber base right now?
Choose the words carefully. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a situation where there are a lot of unknowns. It's a process that I don't think any of us who have covered UNC are familiar with. So I would say yes, that is one of the many possibilities for a conclusion for this whole saga. Let's put it that way. I think the update that was posted, was it Friday, is still the most up to date. But when I say it's a complicated process, like there's a lot there, and it's not something that can really be explained in 5 minutes or 10 minutes on a podcast, because for every question that you ask and answer, there's another question that needs to be asked, and so on and so on. So I would say we know that everyone around there is working hard to try to get this resolved as soon as possible. What that resolution is and when it's going to come is really, that's anybody's guess. It could be 5 minutes from now. It could be never. I mean, there's the possibilities run the gamut, I would say. So that's where things stand. I know that's a nothing update. Everybody's like, well, he didn't say anything, because there's really nothing to say
I mean, you
after the
can't make
update
stuff
from
up,
Friday.
dude. That's not how
Yeah,
IC rolls, right?
yeah, and it's one of those things too that we're just having to try to be very, very precise. And I know it doesn't seem like it in the reporting, because one thing said one way can be misinterpreted and change the entire meaning of everything else. So yeah, I've never seen anything like this since we've been doing this, since we've been covering UNC this way.
Yeah.
But that is where you are when you have a grown person coming over from overseas who's played professional basketball for many years, who's also been in college before, and you're trying to figure out everything. There's just a lot of variables. And I think that's what the UNC staff is working through. And frankly, I I look at it too from kind of a human side. I know we're running out of time, so I'm gonna stop. But I look at it from a human side because, yes, he's 22, but I'm sure he's like, "Oh, man, I get to play at the school that Michael Jordan played at," like, because everybody knows Michael Jordan. He gets over here, everything seems fine, and then it's like, "Hey, you can't play." And then it's like, "We'll see." So I'm sure he's kinda confused and probably doesn't fully understand everything that's going on and all the minutia of UNC and NCAA rules and regulations and Article 4, page 6. So I kind of feel for him because he wants to be out there playing. And
Yeah.
it's a tough situation.
Article 4, page 6 has hated us for years. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there too for all the folks that are checking us out live. There's just not a lot of precedent for this, and Sherrell and Ben have been very calculated, like Sherrell said, about what they can and can't say. And I think a lot of it is just because there's a lot riding on this, and nobody, IC's stance is that we want to be right and not be first. And so I think everybody who's frustrated by it is absolutely within their right. I don't think there's anything wrong about being miffed and irritated that the kid's not playing. But obviously, I think the big thing I would leave everybody with is when something changes, we'll be first to let you know, and we'll be accurate. So just hang tight, be patient with us. Last thing, guys, this is the big one. This is the real reason we wanted to have a show tonight, because we didn't know if we would talk to our beautiful and talented audience. Kansas, Friday night, big thing. Sean, really early measuring stick. It's going to force this team to mature really quickly. What do you need to see against Kansas that will let everybody know that this team is ready for a fight and this team is ready for a marquee opponent?
Well, I've been saying this is a must win game, just given where UNC is at under Hubert Davis. I think looking at Kansas a little deeper makes that a little worrisome, because this is the type of team that UNC won't really see in the ACC. but that will give UNC fits and is the exact opposite of UNC in many ways in terms of elite athletes and length. So it is going to be a really interesting matchup. For the most part, Kansas is pretty young and inexperienced. They're not a great shooting team as of yet, but they have a lot of pieces that will be able to disrupt UNC offensively, I think. So going back to Kyan Evans, they're probably going to put Melvin Council on him, a transfer from St. Bonaventure who's 6'4", has length, pretty good defender, and they're probably going to pressure him full court. And can he handle that? And not just handle it, but can he get into the offense and still then be able to function as a key scorer and shooter? And then you have Seth Trimble, who UNC, going back to the first few days of the transfer portal, decided, hey, you're the guy. You're going to be here 4 years. Defensively, he's going to have the toughest matchup he will have all season in Darren Peterson, potential number 1 pick who's 6'6". And can you maybe not lock him up, but can you frustrate him? So you have those things on both sides of the ball. And then if you have Luka, that obviously opens things up from a shooting perspective. If you don't, going back to the number we've been talking about for years, 8, can they get to 8 threes made? Because that could be a challenge with the team that they have on the board. And then, can they keep Kansas off the boards? And then last thing from me, just from Caleb Wilson, Kansas off the bench has Bryson Tiller, who redshirted last year, but 6'10", strong, athletic, length, like probably one of the few defenders that can physically match up with Wilson all year. So there's going to be a lot of battles individually and from a team perspective, but UNC struggled in these top out-of-conference games. They have one at home. They have a young team that, is talented but has its warts as well, and they need to get one of these to try to become the UNC of old.
Sherrell, what is the easiest path to beating Kansas for North Carolina? And I'm going to say that independent of what Kansas looks like and what they're going to try to do.
I would say this is just my general philosophy about everything, and it always has been, is you don't let the other guys beat you. Is understand that Darren Peterson is a great player. This is not like a look at me or anything or a humble brag, whatever. But I know someone who was talking to a very well-known Hall of Famer who played at UNC, and they were like, that's the best freshman guard they've ever seen about Peterson. And that's like amazingly high praise. So he's going to get his. It's a money game for Seth Trimble, like you said. This is one of those where if he shows out well, that's really going to catch the eye, I think, of NBA scouts. There's going to be a ton there because of Peterson, a ton there because of Caleb Wilson. So it's a chance for Trimble to kind of get his shine. But that's what I would do, is understand that Peterson's probably going to get his 22 to 26, 28 points. And then you just don't let the other guys beat you. The same philosophy with Cooper Flagg, with Kyle Filipowski a few years ago. You just can't allow guys who aren't as talented to have open shots, to get confidence, and then, take off from there, because then you have to deal with that in addition to the superstar player. Whereas if you, kind of choke them off, so to speak, then it's a superstar player who feels like he has to do everything, especially for a young freshman on the road. He's going to feel that pressure to really perform, and he's probably going to take some shots he shouldn't. So if you can kind of egg that on a little bit by making it tough for his teammates, I think that's the way, the path to victory from a defensive standpoint for UNC.
Come on, Rook. Come on, Rook. Shoot it again, Rook. All right, guys. Last question before we wrap this show. Again, a little shorter show tonight, but we did want to make sure we got something for the people, for the peeps, the audience, before season tips off against Central Arkansas tomorrow. All right, Sherrell, give me one headline for UNC basketball prior to Thanksgiving.
Oh, man. I guess they start, 5-0, 6-0 for the first time under Hubert Davis, and they have a signature win heading into the St. Bonaventure and Michigan State games.
Battle for Woj. All right, Sean, same question. Pre-Thanksgiving headline for the squad.
I mean, it's either going to be pre-Thanksgiving, UNC is looking for a quad 1 win and will be struggling to get them, or UNC's, UNC has put together a talented team and is looking strong going into facing Michigan State undefeated and looking like a top 10, top 15 team.
Whew, your mouth to God's ears. All right, boys. Appreciate y'all making time tonight. Shout out to over 325 folks that joined us live for a shorter show. But again, make this calendar entries for you guys, for everybody who's in here. Join us every Sunday. We'd love to see you here. Sean loves to see all you guys in the chat. Sherrell tolerates seeing all you guys in the chat. But either way, I'm putting words in his mouth. You can see the eye roll from here. But just grateful for all of you that joined us live tonight. Again, Tar Heels open against Central Arkansas. Conway, Arkansas is where Central Arkansas is. I know a lot of y'all knew that. We're just waiting for me to call that out. But appreciate y'all being here. For John Siegley producing, for Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring, for Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran, I'm Joey Powell for Inside Carolina. We'll catch you next time on the next Coast to Coast podcast. Y'all take it easy.